Evelyn Harper never imagined her life would collapse on a freezing Manhattan morning. But as she stood outside the courthouse on Center Street, clutching the divorce papers that still smelled of printer ink, she felt the world closing in on her. The city moved around her, taxis honking, steam rising from subway vents, strangers rushing past, but she couldn't hear any of it. All she could hear was the echo of Garrett Lawson's voice from minutes earlier, cold and triumphant, as if he had just won a silent war she didn't know she was fighting. Inside the courtroom, he hadn't even bothered to look at her when she hesitated to sign. He just leaned toward his attorney and whispered something that made the woman smirk. Evelyn recognized that smirk. It was the same expression she had seen on Garrett months before, right after her reputation mysteriously fell apart in the finance event world she had devoted a decade to. Invitations stopped coming. Clients suddenly restructured. Projects vanished. She thought it was bad luck. She thought she had simply hit a rough patch. She never once suspected her own husband. And then Vivienne Rhodes walked into the courtroom. Vivienne, the protégée Evelyn had once mentored, dressed in a fitted coat, holding Garrett's arm as if claiming territory. Evelyn's stomach twisted when Vivienne's perfume drifted by, familiar but nauseating now. Vivienne leaned in and whispered, "You did the right thing signing? Sometimes people need to know when they're out of their league." Evelyn didn't answer. Her throat had closed. She just signed. But the moment the papers left her pen, Garrett announced loudly, loud enough for everyone in the room to hear, that he and Vivienne would be flying to Los Angeles that evening for a strategic partnership summit. He said it with that arrogant pride that once charmed investors and celebrities alike. But today, it only sounded like a knife scraping across Evelyn's dignity. Outside, the wind cut through her thin coat, reminding her she had spent years buying suits, watches, and travel upgrades for Garrett instead of saving for herself. She had $68 in her checking account, no job, no network, and a mother in the hospital in Ohio waiting for bills to be paid. Her phone buzzed with a notification. Garrett and Vivienne had already posted a picture, clinking champagne glasses in a black Mercedes, caption, "New beginnings, no more dead weight." Evelyn swayed on her feet, fighting the urge to collapse. She had just signed away the last pieces of a marriage she had tried desperately to fix, not knowing the betrayal had started long before she sensed anything. She wrapped her arms around herself and whispered, "What do I do now?" But before she could take another breath, a voice called her name from behind, a voice she hadn't heard in years, a voice tied to a chapter she never expected to return. She froze, realizing this voice might be the one thing Garrett could never predict. Evelyn Harper stood in the tiny elevator of her Queens walk-up, gripping two cardboard boxes that held the last pieces of her old life. The elevator creaked as it rose, every sound reminding her how far she had fallen from the polished world she once belonged to. Corporate ballrooms, Wall Street galas, and executive retreats where she used to run the show with a headset and clipboard. Now she could barely hold herself together long enough to reach her new apartment on the 4th floor. When she pushed open the door, the empty studio echoed. No furniture, no warmth. Just a thin mattress she bought on clearance, a folding table, and a single lamp. The air smelled faintly of paint and cleaning solution. Evelyn set the boxes down and took a deep breath that trembled on the way out. She pulled out her laptop, old, scratched duct tape holding the charger together, and opened her email. Rejection after rejection stared back at her. Some were polite. Most were cold excuses. And every one of them had Garrett's fingerprints all over it, though she hadn't realized it yet. She rubbed her temples. "You used to run events for CEOs," she whispered to herself. "How did your life shrink to this?" A gust of wind rattled the window. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to still the shaking inside. The room felt too quiet, too unforgiving. She reached into the second box and lifted an old photograph. Her mother in a hospital gown, smiling despite the tubes and monitors. The reality hit her again. Medical bills were piling up. Her mother had no idea Evelyn was now broke. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the bare floor, hugging her knees. Tears welled despite her trying to blink them away. She wasn't soft, she wasn't weak. She had worked tooth and nail to build her career. But Garrett had taken everything, her confidence, her reputation, and now her financial stability. Still, she forced herself to stand. She wasn't dead yet. She wasn't done. She opened her inbox again. One unread message sat at the top. Subject: clarification. Requested: incident at Lawson Gala. Her heartbeat stuttered. The Lawson Gala was the exact event that destroyed her career, where someone had leaked a manipulated audio clip of her yelling at staff, calling them incompetent. She never said those words. She had managed that night with calm precision. She remembered it clearly. But the clip had gone viral among corporate circles within hours. Garrett convinced her it was a misunderstanding, a moment of stress, urging her to take a step back while he handled the fallout. Now she knew better. Evelyn clicked the email. It was from a mid-level events coordinator at a rival company, asking whether she wanted to clarify her side before their firm published an internal ethics review of recent industry scandals. Her blood ran cold. Someone, somewhere, was re-examining what happened that night. Someone didn't think she was guilty. Evelyn paced the room, adrenaline stirring beneath her skin. Part of her wanted to respond immediately, to fight back, but another part whispered caution. She didn't know the full scope of what Garrett had done, or who else he had pulled into his schemes. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She let it ring once, twice. On the third ring, she picked up. A familiar voice, mature, steady, warm, came through the line. "Evelyn, it's been a long time. I think you and I need to talk." She froze. It was Alexander Reed, the billionaire she once met briefly, the man Garrett never wanted her anywhere near. And the man whose reappearance could change everything. Before Evelyn could speak, Alexander said 6 words that made her knees go weak. "I know what he did to you." Evelyn Harper hadn't heard Alexander Reed's voice in 8 years, yet the moment he said her name, memories flooded back. The elegant rooftop in Midtown, the Manhattan skyline glittering like a promise, the soft hum of jazz drifting between conversations. She had been running that event, guiding staff with calm precision, while the city's most powerful executives mingled under string lights. Back then, she never imagined her life would one day shrink to a dim studio in Queens. But that rooftop night had been a turning point, one she never recognized. Alexander had approached her with a simple compliment. "You run chaos better than most CEOs run companies." She had laughed nervously, thinking he was just being polite. She later learned he rarely said things he didn't mean. At the time, Garrett was still a junior associate in private equity, insecure, easily threatened. He had rushed over, placing an arm possessively around Evelyn's waist, subtly pulling her away from the billionaire, who seemed far too interested in the woman handling his gala. Alexander noticed the gesture, smiled politely, and stepped back. Evelyn thought nothing of it. What she didn't know was that, the next morning, Alexander emailed his assistant about bringing Evelyn on board for a massive biotech summit. But before he could reach her, a message from Garrett arrived. Calm, professional sounding, claiming Evelyn was overextended emotionally, unable to manage large-scale pressure, and preferably left out of high-stakes corporate environments. Garrett had sabotaged her before they were even married. And she never knew. Now, sitting on the cold floor of her tiny apartment, Evelyn felt her stomach twist as she pieced together the pattern. Each opportunity that had fallen through, each client who changed direction, each company that suddenly ghosted her. Garrett had poisoned the wells behind her back long before the deepfake audio clip destroyed her reputation. He had been removing her from his climb to success for years. The realization stung like a fresh betrayal layered over one old wound after another. But Alexander's voice snapped her back. "Evelyn," he said gently, "I don't want to overwhelm you. I only reached out because something came across my desk this morning, something you need to see." Her heartbeat quickened. "What is it?" "A file," he said. "A digital manipulation report. The audio clip that ruined your career. It wasn't just edited, it was manufactured, intentionally." The room tilted. Evelyn pressed a hand to the wall to steady herself. Alexander continued, "I don't know who did it yet, but I know who benefited from it. Garrett." Of course it was Garrett. Hot shame burned behind her eyes. How could she have trusted him so completely? How could she have defended him, sacrificed for him, believed he loved her? Her voice cracked. Why are you helping me now?" There was silence on the line for a moment before Alexander answered. Because I should have helped you 8 years ago. Her breath caught. He went on. And because you deserve to know the truth before it destroys more of your life. Evelyn sat slowly on the mattress, the weight of his words sinking in. She didn't know whether to feel gratitude, fear, or grief for the years she'd lost. Outside, a siren wailed down the street. A dog barked somewhere below. Life carried on, indifferent to the implosion of her world. Alexander's voice softened. I'm sending a car for you tomorrow morning. I want you to come to my office. There's more you need to hear, more than I should say over the phone. Her pulse raced. Tomorrow. Answers. A chance to understand everything Garrett stole from her. But also, a doorway back into a world she thought she'd lost forever. Evelyn, Alexander said quietly, don't be afraid. She swallowed hard, but she was, because deep down she knew tomorrow could change her life in ways she wasn't ready for. The next morning came too quickly for Evelyn Harper. She barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, memories of the past clawed their way forward, demanding to be relived. The phone call with Alexander had opened a door she'd spent years pretending didn't exist. But now the truth was dripping through the cracks, and she could no longer patch them with denial. She spent the early hours pacing her studio apartment, replaying the night everything started to unravel. The night she first suspected Garrett's betrayal without fully understanding it. The night that now, in hindsight, felt like the moment the threads of her life began to snap. It was 18 months ago, at the prestigious Westwood Financial Summit in Beverly Hills. Evelyn had flown out early to oversee the setup of the opening gala, something she had done countless times. She knew the hotel staff by name, directed the lighting crew with confidence, checked table layouts, and reassured a frantic keynote speaker whose suit had torn minutes before rehearsal. It was what she did best, keep everyone else's chaos invisible. She remembered standing on the balcony outside the ballroom, watching the Los Angeles skyline flicker under the night air. Garrett had told her he'd be in meetings until 10. He always seemed to be in meetings lately. She shrugged it off and returned to work, adjusting centerpieces and reviewing guest lists. But around 9:30 p.m., she went up to their suite to grab a binder she'd forgotten. And that was the moment the world she thought she knew began to tilt. Garrett's iPad lay on the bed, still unlocked. A message flashed across the screen. Wear the silver dress tonight. He likes it. V. Vivian Rhodes. Her protege. Her shadow. Her friend. Evelyn froze, eyes widening as message after message scrolled in. Photos. Vivian smiling too closely at a dimly lit bar, Garrett's hand brushing her hair back. Reservations for restaurants Evelyn had never been invited to. Comments dripping with secrecy. She remembered the cold rush down her spine. The instant denial. The desperate attempt to convince herself she was misunderstanding everything. She hadn't known then that she was already losing more than her marriage. She was losing her career, her reputation, her stability. And Garrett had already begun crafting the deepfake audio that would end her professional life. But that night, in the suite that smelled faintly of expensive cologne and betrayal, she didn't yet grasp the scale of destruction. She simply stood there, shaking. A knock at the door jolted her. It was Vivian herself, breathless, pretending to have just arrived. "Oh, Evelyn, I didn't know you were up here," she said, her smile too bright. Garrett appeared behind her moments later, shirt collar undone, hair slightly out of place. They exchanged a glance so fleeting, Evelyn almost missed it. Almost. But when Garrett placed a hand on Vivian's shoulder to steady her after rushing from a meeting, Evelyn felt her stomach twist. Something inside her cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like a hairline fracture waiting for the right pressure to splinter apart. Evelyn didn't confront them. Not yet. She simply brushed past, heading back to the ballroom with the binder clutched tightly, pretending nothing was wrong. But she knew. Deep down, she knew. That night, she worked the gala flawlessly, smiling, planning, adjusting camera angles, directing waitstaff, and nobody noticed the hollow ache beneath her ribs. Now, standing alone in her queen's apartment with the morning sun creeping across the floor, she felt that same ache. Her phone buzzed. A text from Alexander. "Car is downstairs. Ready when you are." Evelyn grabbed her coat and took one last look at the bare room. She didn't know it yet, but stepping out that door, meant walking straight toward a truth that would shatter everything she thought she understood about her marriage and herself. The black sedan idled at the curb as Evelyn stepped outside, bracing against the cold Manhattan air. The driver, a quiet middle-aged man in a suit, opened the door for her without a word. Inside, the leather smelled clean, expensive, nothing like the worn seats of the subway she'd been riding for weeks. As the car pulled away, weaving through traffic toward Park Avenue, Evelyn's stomach twisted. She wasn't ready. But she also couldn't stay in the dark any longer. They arrived in front of a sleek glass tower that mirrored the city around it. Alexander Reed's name wasn't on the building, but she knew this was his world. Polished floors, discreet security, people speaking in low, purposeful tones. The elevator whisked her upward, faster than her heartbeat could settle. When the doors opened, Alexander was waiting. He wasn't in a boardroom. He wasn't flanked by assistants. Instead, he stood near a corner window overlooking the skyline, sleeves rolled up, studying a folder on a conference table. He looked up when she entered, his expression softening just enough to show he'd been concerned. "Evelyn," he said, "I'm glad you came." She tried to smile but couldn't quite manage it. "You said you had something to show me." He motioned for her to sit. The chair was too comfortable, too stable. Everything her life wasn't. He slid a stack of documents across the table. "This is a forensic analysis of the audio clip from the Lawson Gala. It wasn't edited. It was artificially generated." Her breath caught. "So it really was fake." "Engineered to match your voice," he confirmed. "Someone used a voice training model and stitched it into a conversation that never happened." She stared at the waveforms printed on the page, each line a confirmation that she wasn't crazy. She hadn't imagined the sabotage. But the next page turned her blood cold. Financial transactions, wire transfers, all between Garrett and a tech contractor who specialized in audio manipulation. Alexander watched her expression darken. "That's not all. I had my legal team dig deeper. Garrett didn't just tank your job opportunities. He contacted your clients directly, off the record, telling them you were emotionally unstable, unreliable, and a liability under pressure." Evelyn pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the bruises of old shame resurface. "All the cancellations, that was him?" "Yes," Alexander said quietly. "Not bad luck, not coincidence. Him." Her throat tightened. She blinked hard, but tears still formed. She hated that she was crying in front of someone she barely knew. But Alexander didn't look away. He didn't pity her. He simply let her gather herself. Then he slid over another document, one that made her stomach drop even further. "This," he said, "is the draft of your divorce settlement, the one you signed." Evelyn frowned. "What about it?" "There's a clause added in at the last minute. A clause most people don't notice unless they're looking closely." He tapped the paragraph. "It states that you acknowledged you were the cause of professional disruption for Garrett Lawson, and therefore waived any claim to marital assets tied to his business." Evelyn's head spun. "I never saw this. My lawyer never mentioned it." Alexander's expression hardened. "Your lawyer was handpicked by Garrett's firm. He set you up." A wave of nausea rolled over her. She gripped the table to steady herself. "He orchestrated everything," she whispered. "My downfall, my silence, even the terms of the divorce." Alexander nodded once. "Yes, and now you have proof." Evelyn stared at the documents. Her past, her humiliation, her losses, all laid bare in black and white. For the first time, anger ignited beneath the pain. A slow, trembling fire. But Alexander wasn't finished. "There's one more thing," he said, sliding a final page toward her. Evelyn leaned in. When she read the name at the top, her breath stopped. Vivienne Rhodes. And under it, proof that Vivienne had helped fabricate the deepfake that destroyed her. Evelyn staggered out of the glass tower on Park Avenue as if the ground had tilted beneath her. The city roared around her, honking cabs, footsteps slapping against concrete, snippets of conversations, but everything sounded distant, muffled, like she was underwater. The evidence Alexander showed her, the deepfake, the wire transfers, Vivienne's involvement, the poisoned recommendations, the corrupt divorce clause swirled through her mind in a storm she couldn't outrun. She didn't take the waiting car. She didn't even know where she was going. She just walked. Her legs carried her through Midtown, past glittering storefronts on Madison Avenue, past couples holding hands, past the places where she used to plan corporate holiday galas before her world collapsed. The cold air stung her cheeks, but she didn't bother wiping the tears that escaped silently. By the time she reached the East River Promenade, her chest felt tight, her breath shallow. She gripped the railing, staring at the rippling gray water. Barges drifted by, slow and heavy. A jogger ran past, glancing at her briefly, maybe wondering if she was okay, but no one stopped. New York rarely did. Evelyn sank onto a bench, the metal freezing beneath her. She buried her face in her hands. "How could he?" she whispered. How could anyone do that to someone they claimed to love? The betrayal wasn't just infidelity. It wasn't just the humiliation of seeing Vivian cling to Garrett. It was systematic, calculated destruction, professional murder. Garrett hadn't just wanted freedom. He wanted her erased. She pulled out her phone, staring at the cracked screen. Her bank balance blinked back, $68.07. Her mother's latest hospital bill, over $3,400, was due next week. Evelyn felt the world closing in again. What would she tell her mother? That the daughter she had always called strong and capable had been stripped of everything by the man she trusted most? Her hands shook as she scrolled through old messages, stopping on one from months ago, Garrett reassuring her during the fallout from the deepfake. "Just stay quiet for a while. I'll handle everything." She had believed him. God, she had believed him. She closed her eyes, drawing a trembling breath. If she had stepped off the promenade into the river at that moment, no one would have noticed for hours. The thought struck her, frightening in its clarity. A wave of despair washed through her so suddenly she gasped. She pressed a palm to her chest, forcing herself to breathe. "This is not who you are," she whispered shakily. "You don't give up." But the words felt thin, fragile, nothing like the confident woman she used to be. She leaned back, staring up at the pale winter sky. Just then her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. She ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Finally she pulled it out. From unknown message. "Evelyn, it's important. Please don't shut down on me now. A.R. Alexander." Another buzz. A second message. "You are not alone in this. Meet me tonight, please." Her breath hitched. And then a third message. "I have something that could turn everything around, but it won't wait." Evelyn stared at the glowing screen, heart pounding. She didn't know whether to trust him. She didn't know if she even trusted herself right now. But the alternative, sitting here, drowning in the weight of Garrett's lies, felt unbearable. She stood slowly, gripping the railing one last time before turning toward the city. Her legs were unsteady, her mind a tangled knot of fear and exhaustion. But somewhere, faintly, beneath the wreckage, a spark flickered. She wasn't done. Not yet. And tonight, she would learn something that would shift the balance of power in ways she never could have imagined. Evelyn arrived at the small cafe on the Lower East Side 30 minutes early, her nerves twisting so tightly she could barely sit still. The place was dimly lit, warmed by hanging Edison bulbs and the scent of roasted coffee beans. It was quiet. Intentionally chosen, she suspected, far from the corporate world where whispers traveled faster than truth. She wrapped her hands around the warm mud, trying to steady herself. Her reflection in the window showed a woman she barely recognized. Tired eyes, pale skin, shoulders tense from weeks, years of emotional weight. The bell above the door chimed. Alexander Reed stepped inside, scanning the room. When he saw her, he removed his gloves and approached quietly. He didn't sit immediately. He studied her face, as if checking whether she was strong enough for what he was about to say. "You look cold," he murmured. "I am," she admitted, though they both knew she wasn't talking about the weather. He took the seat across from her. No bodyguards, no assistants, just him. She noticed he wasn't carrying his usual tablet or laptop. Only a simple leather folder rested in his hand. That folder terrified her. "Before I show you anything," Alexander began, "I need you to understand something. What Garrett did, it wasn't impulsive, it wasn't emotional, it was strategic." Her stomach tightened. "Why? Why go that far? What did I ever do to him?" Alexander opened the folder but didn't turn it toward her yet. "Because you were in his way." "In his way?" "I supported him. I built half his career." "You were in his way," Alexander repeated, "of the future he wanted, of the persona he crafted. You saw too much. You knew the truth about how many of his deals succeeded because you saved them. He couldn't climb with you standing behind him. He needed you gone." Evelyn felt sick. Alexander finally rotated the folder toward her. Inside were printed screenshots, emails, texts, time-stamped messages. Some between Garrett and Vivienne, others between Garrett and 3 high-profile investors. Her name was in all of them, and not in flattering ways. Garrett had fed a narrative for years. Evelyn was unstable, emotional, incapable of handling pressure, dragging down his brand. Alexander tapped one email. "This," he said softly, "is from the week after I met you 8 years ago." Her breath froze. The message, written by Garrett to a senior advisor at Reed Biotech, warned them against hiring her, accused her of being erratic, claimed she had professional meltdowns, said she would embarrass any team she joined. Every line was a lie, and she knew it. She had never even raised her voice in a professional setting. "I tried to reach out again later," Alexander said, leaning back. "I thought maybe you were simply unavailable. But then, other messages started coming." He slid another page forward. This time, the sender wasn't Garrett. It was Vivienne. Vivienne had sent a fake witness statement claiming Evelyn had verbally assaulted staff during the Lawson Gala. She had attached the deepfake audio as proof. The air left Evelyn's lungs. She closed her eyes, shaking. "I mentored her. I helped her get her first job." "I know," Alexander said softly. "People like her. They see kindness as a stepping stone, not a gift." Evelyn wiped a tear with the back of her hand, trying to steady her breathing. Alexander hesitated before pulling out the final page. "This one," he said, "came from someone unexpected." He placed it in front of her, a signed statement from a janitor at the courthouse. Evelyn frowned in confusion. Alexander explained, "He's worked there 28 years. He overheard Garrett's lawyer giving instructions before your hearing, discussing how to get you to sign the altered clause without noticing." Evelyn's pulse raced. The janitor had written down every detail. He hadn't understood the legal terms, but he knew something wasn't right, and he had reported it, quietly, to a legal aid hotline. That tip had eventually landed on Alexander's desk through a network of corporate watchdogs. Evelyn pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. All this time, strangers had cared more about her fate than the man she married. She felt the spark from earlier flicker again, faint but persistent. A single thought formed, rising through the despair like a breath of fire. "I'm not powerless." Alexander leaned forward, voice low. "Evelyn, this is your moment. You can fight back." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression changed instantly, sharpening with concern. He slid the phone toward her. A news alert flashed across the display. "Garrett Lawson spotted with new strategic partner in Beverly Hills. Insiders claim announcement coming." Evelyn's pulse hammered. Another twist, and this time it was coming straight at her. And she didn't yet know this announcement would threaten to destroy the last thing she had left. Evelyn stared at the flashing news alert on Alexander's phone, her pulse pounding in her ears. Garrett Lawson, announcing a strategic partnership in Beverly Hills? He had just finalized the divorce. He had humiliated her publicly, and now he was preparing to leverage this new alliance to climb even higher. Alexander watched her reaction carefully. "He's moving fast," he said quietly. "Faster than I expected." Evelyn's throat tightened. "What is he doing now?" Alexander folded his hands on the table. "He's aligning himself with Westmont Capital. They're not clean players. If he merges with them, he'll gain the influence he's always craved. Enough to bury every trace of what he did to you." Evelyn went cold. "Bury everything. Erase her completely." "That's why this can't wait," Alexander continued. "You need protection, resources, a place to rebuild." He paused, then spoke the words she never imagined hearing. "I want you to come work for me." Evelyn blinked. "Work for you?" "Yes. In a formal capacity, as Senior Director of Strategic Events for Reed Biotech." The title landed like a weight on her chest. A heavy, unreal, impossible weight. I can't," she stammered. "Not like this. I'm a mess. My reputation is ruined. No one in the industry will take me seriously again." Alexander shook his head firmly. "You're wrong. Your reputation wasn't ruined. It was stolen. There's a difference." His tone was steady, unwavering. Evelyn almost hated how calm he was, how certain, when she felt anything but. "But why me?" she whispered. "After everything? After all this time?" Alexander hesitated before answering. "Because I've seen what you're capable of. Not from reports, not through gossip. I've seen you manage chaos with grace. I've seen you salvage events that would have collapsed without you, and I've seen how fiercely loyal you are to the people you believe in." He paused. "That night 8 years ago, you were the only person in the room who didn't change when I walked in. You treated me like a human being, not an investment." Evelyn swallowed hard. She remembered that night, but she never knew it mattered to anyone, especially not to him. Alexander continued, "I should have stepped in then, but Garrett poisoned the well before I even approached. I didn't know you were being manipulated. I do now." He leaned slightly forward, eyes steady on hers. "And I don't intend to let him do it again." Evelyn's breath faltered. The weight of his words pressed against every bruise inside her. This wasn't pity. This wasn't charity. It felt genuine. But fear, cold, deep fear, anchored her. "What if he attacks me again?" she whispered. "What if he destroys every opportunity you give me?" Alexander exhaled, almost amused. "Let him try. My legal team will crush his methods before he even gets started, and my reputation is harder to touch than he thinks." She stared at him, uncertain. "I don't want to be your charity case." "You won't be." His voice softened. "But you do need a starting point, a place to stand. Let me give you that." The silence stretched between them, warm, fragile, charged with meaning she didn't dare examine. Finally she asked, "What would I have to do?" Alexander slid a sleek black binder across the table. "This," he said, "is the upcoming Reed Biotech Global Summit. 3 days, Beverly Hills. Every major investor will be there, including Westmont Capital." Evelyn's heart dropped. "Beverly Hills?" she whispered. "Yes," Alexander said. "If Garrett is planning his big announcement, it will happen there. I want you leading our entire event team. I want you in that room." Her palms went cold. Face him? Return to Beverly Hills, the place where she first realized her marriage was rotting beneath her feet? Alexander watched her, patient but intense. "This is your chance to take back everything he stole." Evelyn closed her eyes for a brief moment, then opened them with something new burning behind her exhaustion. Resolve. Not strength. Not yet. But resolve. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll do it." Alexander's expression softened into something close to relief. "Then pack your things," he said. "We leave tomorrow." Evelyn's pulse hammered. Tomorrow. Back to Beverly Hills. Back to the battlefield. And she didn't yet know that in Beverly Hills someone unexpected was waiting, with a secret that could either rescue her future or destroy it completely. The next morning, Evelyn boarded a flight to San Francisco with a small carry-on bag and a heart full of fear she tried to hide. Alexander had offered her the jet, but she refused. She didn't want the staff seeing her before she'd even proven she belonged on his team. Commercial was enough. Ordinary was enough. She needed to earn her way up this time. When she landed at SFO, a car from Reed Biotech was waiting for her. The driver greeted her politely, loading her bag into the trunk before taking the winding road along the San Francisco Bay. The air was crisp, tinged with salt, and the skyline glittered under the morning sun. Evelyn watched the water rush and curl against the rocks. A small, stubborn part of her felt something stir, something she hadn't felt in months. Possibility. Her temporary apartment was small but modern, filled with light, minimalistic furniture, a clean desk, and a balcony overlooking the bay. It felt like a place where healing could begin, not instantly, but slowly, like a bruise fading with time. She barely had 20 minutes to settle before her phone buzzed. From Alexander, "Meeting starts in an hour." 4th floor West Wing, bring the binder. Evelyn straightened her shoulders and headed to the Reed Biotech campus. The moment she stepped inside, she felt out of place among the sharp-suited executives and polished professionals carrying tablets and trading rapid-fire updates. But no one looked down on her. No one whispered. No one smirked the way Garrett's colleagues always had. Still, old insecurities clawed at her. She found the meeting room, a sleek, glass-walled space with a sprawling view of the Bay Bridge. Inside, a dozen team members sat around the long table. They glanced up as she entered, not coldly, not dismissively, curiously. Alexander stood at the head of the table. "This is Evelyn Harper," he announced, voice steady and confident. "She'll be leading our entire event operations for the Reed Biotech Global Summit." A murmur rippled across the room. Evelyn felt her pulse stutter. Her palms dampened. Was this too soon? Too much? A woman near the middle of the table, early 40s, smart eyes, navy blazer, raised her hand slightly. She's the one who handled the Westwood Summit, isn't she? The one everyone still talks about? Evelyn blinked. People remembered that event? Another team member chimed in. I thought the meltdown clip was from her. Alexander cut in sharply. The clip was fake. She was exonerated. The room went silent. Then the woman in the navy blazer nodded at Evelyn. Good. We could use someone with real composure. Beverly Hills is going to be chaos. Evelyn swallowed. Thank you. I'll do my best. The meeting launched into logistics. Flight itineraries, vendor contracts, influencer outreach, media angles. Evelyn took notes, her mind already organizing tasks, solving gaps, mapping contingencies. Each detail grounded her. Each decision restored a piece of her confidence. For the first time since her life fell apart, she remembered what competence felt like. She remembered who she used to be. After the meeting ended, Alexander approached quietly. You handled that well, she shrugged, nerves still tingling. I'm rusty. No, he said gently. You're rising. She didn't know how to respond, so she focused on packing her notes. But Alexander lingered. There's something else, he said. Something I didn't want to mention until you were settled. Evelyn froze. His tone was different, more cautious, more serious. He took out his phone and showed her a short message forwarded from one of his assistants. A name she didn't expect. Vivian Rhodes is requesting a private meeting with you. Says it's urgent. Evelyn's stomach twisted. Vivian. The woman who betrayed her. The woman who helped destroy her. Do you want to meet her? Alexander asked. Evelyn didn't answer right away. Because deep down, she already knew. If Vivian wanted to talk, it meant Garrett was hiding a secret even darker than the ones she'd already uncovered. Evelyn agreed to meet Vivian only because every instinct told her the woman wasn't reaching out of guilt. She was reaching out of fear. And fear meant leverage. Fear meant Garrett had slipped somewhere. Fear meant the truth was finally cracking open. They met in a quiet cafe near the Embarcadero, far from the corporate buzz of the Reed Biotech campus. Evelyn arrived early, choosing a booth in the back, where the afternoon light filtered through the windows in thin, golden stripes. She ordered tea she barely touched. Her hands were steady, but her pulse betrayed her. 10 minutes later, Vivian rushed in. Not glided in. Not strutted in. Rushed. Her hair was frizzy, makeup smudged, her designer coat slipping off one shoulder. She looked nothing like the pristine, polished woman who once wrapped herself around Garrett like she owned him. She looked scared. Really scared. Vivian spotted Evelyn and hurried over, sliding into the booth opposite her. Her eyes darted around the cafe before she leaned in. You have to help me, she whispered. Evelyn stared at her, unimpressed. I don't owe you anything. Vivian flinched as if slapped. I know you don't, but I didn't know how far Garrett would go. I didn't know he... Her voice cracked. She dropped her face into her hands, shoulders shaking. Evelyn waited. She would not comfort her. After a long, trembling breath, Vivian lifted her head. He's turning on me. The same way he turned on you. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. You didn't think you were special? Vivian's jaw tightened. I thought he loved me. He said you were the toxic one. He said you were unstable. He said I was the reason he could finally breathe. Evelyn's stomach churned, once from disgust, once from recognition. She had believed the same lies once. Vivian continued, voice trembling. But after you signed the divorce, everything changed. He's been meeting with Westmont Capital without me. He's hiding deals, hiding accounts, and yesterday... Her breath faltered. Yesterday I overheard him say he didn't need me anymore, that I'd served my purpose. There it was, the same sentence he'd told Evelyn a year ago, a cold, eerie echo. Vivian reached into her purse, pulling out a small USB drive. She pushed it across the table with shaking fingers. This is everything. Emails, voice memos, screenshots, conversations he didn't know I recorded. Proof he paid for the deepfake. Proof he manipulated the divorce. Proof he planned to destroy your career so you couldn't claim any part of his assets. Evelyn stared at the tiny device, her heartbeat slipping into a sharp rhythm. This was it, the missing piece. The reason I came, Vivian whispered, is because he's planning something big in Beverly Hills. Something that will wipe away any chance of him being held accountable. If he announces this partnership with Westmont, he'll be untouchable. Evelyn swallowed. Why give this to me? Vivian let out a broken laugh. Because I'm next. Because I heard him, planning things about me. and because the only person who has more reason than me to burn him is you." The cafe hummed around them, espresso machines hissing, low chatter, clinking cups. But at their table, the world felt suspended. Evelyn slowly closed her hand around the USB. Vivian leaned forward, tears pooling in her eyes. "Please, I know I don't deserve kindness, but I need protection. If you expose him, I won't survive the fallout alone." Evelyn's voice was steady. "I won't protect you, but I'll use the truth. And if that truth takes him down, you can decide how you want to survive afterward." Vivian nodded, defeated. She stood to leave. But before she stepped away, she murmured one final warning. "Garrett didn't destroy you because he wanted freedom. He destroyed you because he's hiding something. Something that will explode the moment you step into Beverly Hills." Evelyn didn't sleep that night. She sat at her desk in the small San Francisco apartment, the USB drive lying in the center like a ticking bomb. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Vivian's face. Panicked, hollow, desperate. And she heard her warning on a loop. "Garrett is hiding something that will explode the moment you step into Beverly Hills." What could be bigger than the deepfake? Bigger than sabotaging her entire career? Bigger than manipulating investors, partners, and the divorce? She didn't know. But she would find out. At sunrise, she headed to the Reed Biotech campus. Alexander was already there, sleeves rolled up, speaking quietly with his chief of operations. When he saw Evelyn, he paused mid-sentence, excused himself, and walked straight toward her. "You didn't sleep," he said. She shook her head. "I met with Vivienne." Alexander's expression tightened. "And she gave me proof. Real proof. Everything." Evelyn placed the USB in his palm. "But she also warned me about something else. Something Garrett is planning in Beverly Hills." Alexander slipped the drive into his pocket. "Then we need to be ahead of him. Not reactive. Strategic." He was steady, calm, the opposite of the storm inside her. "We're leaving today," he continued. "I want you on the jet with the core team. We'll prep mid-air." Evelyn froze. The jet? She had never flown private. She had only ever watched others do it, Garrett and Vivienne included, while she worked behind the scenes like a ghost. "I don't think," she began. "I do," Alexander interrupted gently. "You're leading the summit. You deserve to arrive like a leader." She felt her throat tighten. "I'm not used to that level of attention." He gave a faint smile. "Then let me change what you're used to." 5 hours later, Evelyn stood on the tarmac at a private hangar near SFO. The jet gleamed under the California sun, sleek, white, impossibly elegant. The Reed Biotech logo shimmered faintly near the tail. She hesitated at the base of the stairs. Alexander turned back from the top step. "Evelyn," he said quietly, "you're not walking into this as a victim. You're walking in as someone who finally knows the truth." She inhaled, climbed the steps, and stepped into a world Garrett had always told her she didn't belong to. Inside, the jet felt more like a luxury apartment. Cream leather seats, walnut paneling, soft ambient lighting. A flight attendant offered her sparkling water. She murmured thanks, trying not to gawk. The team settled in, reviewing schedules, security protocols, media lists. But Evelyn struggled to focus. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened her laptop. Alexander took the seat beside her. "Talk to me," he said softly. She hesitated. "I don't know what Garrett is planning, but Vivian's fear felt real. And if he launches something at the summit, something illegal or catastrophic, it could destroy more than my career." Alexander folded his hands. "Then we'll be ready for it. My legal team will analyze everything on the USB before we land." She nodded. But the fear didn't disappear. Not yet. The plane taxied. The engines roared. As the jet lifted above the clouds, Evelyn stared out the window at the shrinking bay. This was happening. She was going back to Beverly Hills, the scene of her undoing, and soon her rising. Hours later, as they neared Los Angeles, Alexander tapped her shoulder. "We just got initial results from the USB," he said. "You need to see this." She leaned in. On his tablet screen was a folder Vivian had hidden deep inside the drive. A folder labeled Westmont Project, Confidential. Inside it, emails, files, and plans outlining something so explosive, so unethical, so dangerous, that Evelyn felt every hair on her arms rise. Alexander exhaled slowly. "This isn't just about your marriage anymore." Evelyn stared at the documents, pulse racing. Garrett wasn't just building a partnership, he was building a scandal big enough to take down half of Beverly Hills. The sun was sinking behind the Los Angeles skyline when the jet touched down at the private terminal. The sky glowed a deep gold, washing over the tarmac and the palm trees swaying gently beyond the hangar. Beverly Hills had always felt surreal to Evelyn. Too shiny, too curated, too full of elegant facades hiding darker truths underneath. But this time, she wasn't arriving as a spectator. She was arriving as someone who finally had the power to burn the stage down. A black SUV waited for the Reed Biotech delegation. As Evelyn stepped inside, her stomach tightened. She wasn't just here to run an event. She was stepping straight into Garrett's battlefield. The streets of Los Angeles blurred past, the boutiques on Rodeo Drive, the glowing signs of iconic restaurants, the expensive cars humming along Wilshire. Everything reminded her of the night she discovered Garrett's betrayal. Everything reminded her of the woman she used to be. The SUV pulled into the circular driveway of the Beverly Regent, one of the most luxurious hotels in the city. Staff lined the entrance, greeting Alexander and his team as if they were royalty. Evelyn followed, feeling a mixture of awe and dread. It was the same hotel where her world had begun to crack open 18 months ago. Inside, the lobby glowed with crystal chandeliers and marble floors. She caught her reflection in one of the gold-trimmed mirrors, still tired, still wounded, but standing taller than she had in months. "Your suite is on the top floor," a concierge told her, handing over a keycard embossed with her initials. Evelyn blinked. "Suite?" Alexander stepped beside her. "You'll need space to work, relax, and prepare. The next 3 days will be intense." She had never stayed in a suite. She barely stayed in hotels unless she was running events. This felt unreal, but there was no time to soak it in. As soon as she entered the elevator, Alexander held his phone out. The legal team decoded more files from the USB. Evelyn's pulse quickened. "And? Garrett and Westmont Capital are planning a partnership," he said quietly. "They're planning a shell company, one designed to launder investor money through fraudulent medical trials." Evelyn froze mid-step. "What?" she whispered. "They're using fake clinical trial data," Alexander continued. "Fabricated patient lists. Artificial research outcomes. If they succeed, investors will pour in billions chasing a fabricated miracle drug." Her stomach dropped. "And the Lawson Gala deepfake?" he added. "It wasn't just to destroy you. They needed someone to blame if regulators discovered inconsistencies. They were preparing a scapegoat." Evelyn leaned against the elevator wall, the weight of the revelation crushing. "They were going to frame me." "Yes," Alexander said, "and they still might if we don't get ahead of it." The elevator chimed. They stepped into her suite, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a private terrace, a marble bathroom. It was beautiful, but she barely noticed. "What do we do?" she asked. Alexander set his briefcase on the table. "We expose them. And we do it at the summit, publicly, strategically, legally." Fear rushed through her. "If Garrett realizes I'm here to ruin him—" "He won't," Alexander said firmly, "because you're not here to ruin him. You're here to reclaim yourself." She swallowed hard. "He's going to be at the summit tomorrow, and Vivienne said he's hiding something that will explode when I walk in." Alexander nodded slowly. "I know, and you need to be prepared." He placed a small black device on the table. Evelyn frowned. "What's that?" "A recorder," he said. "A secure one. If Garrett approaches you, and he will, you capture everything. Your safety depends on it." Evelyn stared at the device, her heart pounding. This wasn't just an event anymore. This was a war. A soft chime sounded from her phone. A notification from Garrett. Her breath caught when she read it. "Welcome back to Beverly Hills, Evelyn. You won't survive round 2. Her hands shook. Alexander stepped closer. "What does it say?" Evelyn exhaled shakily. "It means he already knows I'm here." Her vision blurred for a second, panic flaring, then anger. Cold, steady anger. And with that anger rising, Evelyn realized she wasn't in Beverly Hills to run from Garrett. She was here to end him. Evelyn couldn't stop replaying Garrett's message as she stood on the terrace of her suite, looking out over Beverly Hills. The city sparkled beneath her like a bed of diamonds, deceptively beautiful, deceptively calm. She gripped the railing until her knuckles whitened, the cool night wind teasing strands of hair across her face. "You won't survive round 2. The threat wasn't empty. Garrett never used words lightly. If he was provoking her, it meant he believed he was already winning. But he no longer knew who she was. Inside the suite, the lights were dimmed. Alexander stood by the marble counter, reviewing files projected on a tablet. His jaw was tighter than usual, a sign he wasn't as composed as he appeared. "You should eat something," he said quietly, without looking up. "I can't." Evelyn wrapped her arms around herself. "Not like this." Alexander walked onto the terrace, stopping beside her. "He's trying to destabilize you. That message wasn't a warning, it was bait." "And what does he want me to do?" she said bitterly. "Run away? Break down? Lose control so he can paint me as unstable? Again?" "He wants you to feel powerless," Alexander said. "Because if you do, you won't notice his next move." Evelyn turned sharply. "Do you know what it is?" He hesitated. That alone terrified her. "We know parts of it," he admitted. "Enough to be dangerous, but whatever he's hiding, we don't have the full picture yet. Vivienne only knew pieces." Evelyn walked back inside, pacing the length of the suite. "She said something would explode when I showed up. What does that even mean? A public scene? A leak? A smear campaign?" "Possibly all three," Alexander replied. She dragged a hand through her hair. "I hate that he can still get in my head." Alexander stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "Then take back control. Tomorrow, you walk into that summit not as Garrett's victim, but as the woman who can end him." Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment, steadying her breath. "I'm scared, Alex." "I know," he said softly, "but courage isn't the absence of fear. It's what you do with it." His words sank deep, grounding her. She didn't trust easily anymore, but she trusted him. Something about his presence felt like a hand on her back, holding her upright when the rest of the world wanted her to kneel. There was a knock at the door. Evelyn and Alexander exchanged a tense glance. "Stay here," he said, stepping forward. But when he opened the door, it wasn't a threat. It was hotel staff, two concierges in crisp uniforms, rolling in a tall cart covered in black velvet cloth. They bowed politely. "Delivery for Miss Harper," one announced. Evelyn frowned. "I didn't order anything." "This was arranged by a Mr. Reed," the concierge said, gesturing toward Alexander. His instructions were very specific. When they left, Alexander pulled the velvet cloth away. Evelyn gasped. Inside the wardrobe cart hung an evening dress. Deep emerald satin, elegant but powerful, with clean lines and a silhouette that demanded attention without begging for it. Beside it sat a pair of heels, a simple clutch, and a handwritten card. She opened it. "Wear this tomorrow." "Not for him. For you." Her throat tightened. She traced the words with her thumb. "Why did you do this?" she whispered. Alexander's eyes softened. "Because when you stand in that room tomorrow, I want everyone, including Garrett, to see who you really are. Not the story he crafted, not the lie he sold." Emotion stung behind her ribs. For a moment she couldn't speak. She walked back to the terrace, dress held gently against her chest. The city lights shimmered below her, and a strange, unfamiliar warmth bloomed inside her. Hope. But as she stood there, her phone buzzed again. Another message. From unknown. "See you at the summit, Evelyn. Bring the emerald dress. It'll look perfect for what I have planned." Her heart stopped. He knew about the dress. He knew everything. Evelyn felt the world shift beneath her feet as she whispered, "How does he know?" Evelyn's breath hitched as she stared at the message glowing on her phone screen. "Bring the emerald dress. It'll look perfect for what I have planned." Her fingers tightened around the device until her knuckles ached. There were only 3 people who knew about the dress. Her, Alexander, and the hotel staff who rolled it in minutes earlier. She lifted her eyes, panic flaring. "Alex." "He knows." Alexander's expression sharpened instantly. "Let me see." He scanned the text, jaw clenching with a quiet fury Evelyn had never seen from him before. He wasn't just angry, he was calculating, every muscle taut with controlled precision. "We have a leak," he said. A cold chill ran down her spine. "One of your team?" "Possibly," he answered. "Or someone planted inside the hotel, or worse." He paused. "Garrett might have prepped the city before you even arrived." Evelyn felt sick. "How could he know about the dress?" she whispered. "It was delivered less than an hour ago." Alexander paced the suite, scanning the walls, the lamps, the corners. Then, in a sudden motion, he crouched and checked under the side table. Nothing. He checked the lamp. Nothing. But when he ran his fingers along the underside of the minibar counter, he froze. A tiny blinking light stared back. Evelyn's stomach dropped. "Is that?" "A microtransmitter," he said grimly. "Someone planted it here, recently." She staggered backward, her heart racing. "He's listening to us?" He was, Alexander corrected. Not anymore. He snapped the device out with one swift motion. Evelyn felt exposed, violated, stripped bare. This wasn't just sabotage, this was surveillance. Alexander stood and placed a hand on her shoulder. He's desperate, Evelyn. Desperate men make mistakes. This was one of them. She struggled to steady her breath. So he's watching, listening, planning something for tomorrow. Yes, Alexander said, but now so are we. An hour later, they relocated to a secured executive suite on another floor, one Alexander personally vetted. Only 2 Reed Biotech security members knew the new room number. Evelyn didn't unpack the emerald dress. She laid it carefully on the bed, staring at it like it held a prophecy. What if wearing it puts me in danger? She asked quietly. Alexander studied her. Everything about tomorrow is dangerous, but the dress isn't the danger. It's what Garrett thinks he can do with you in it. She swallowed. You think he's planning a public humiliation? No, Alexander replied. Garrett never works through humiliation. He works through leverage, through narrative. He wants to shape what the room believes about you. So, he wants me emotional, unstable, cornered. Exactly. Evelyn let out a shaky laugh. He hasn't seen me lately. Alexander smiled faintly, but didn't respond. Instead, he opened a laptop and pulled up security photos from the Beverly Regent's check-in logs. Evelyn froze when she saw Garrett entering the hotel hours earlier, smug, confident, Vivienne nowhere in sight, flanked by 2 Westmont Capital executives. Alexander zoomed in. There, he said. Look closely. A woman followed the group at a distance, a hotel staff uniform, hair tucked neatly, head lowered. Evelyn gasped. I know her. She used to assist at MGX Productions. Garrett used her to plant the deepfake story. Alexander nodded. She's the one who planted the transmitter. And she's here, which means tomorrow's attack won't be subtle. Evelyn wrapped her arms around herself. I'm walking into a trap. You're walking into a stage, Alexander corrected, and we're going to flip the script. She met his eyes, fear and determination warring inside her. How? With evidence, he said. With control, with strategy. Then softer, and with you not facing him alone. Something inside her steadied. But before comfort could settle, a sudden knock echoed at the door. 3 slow taps, then silence. Evelyn stiffened. Alexander motioned for her to stay back. He approached the door cautiously. Who is it? He demanded. A muffled voice answered. It's Vivienne. I know what he's planning for the summit, and you need to hear it, now. Alexander opened the door only after checking the hallway through the peephole twice. Vivienne stepped inside quickly, hood pulled over her head, breath trembling. She looked worse than earlier, eyes red, hands shaking, mascara streaks smudged under her lashes. She wasn't pretending anymore. Evelyn didn't move from where she stood near the window, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Talk, she said coldly, and make it fast. Vivienne nodded, swallowing hard. He's planning to expose you publicly at the summit tomorrow. That's nothing new, Evelyn said. He's been trying to destroy me for years. No, Vivienne said, raising her voice slightly. This is different. He's not trying to embarrass you. He's trying to implicate you. Evelyn felt her stomach twist. In what? Vivienne wrung her hands. In the Westmont scheme. He's staging evidence to make it look like you coordinated the fabricated clinical trials before your divorce. He's going to announce it in front of investors, then drop the proof. He wants you arrested, on stage. For a moment, the world tilted sideways. Evelyn gripped the back of a chair, breath stuttering. She had expected hostility, sabotage, manipulation. But this, he wanted her destroyed. Publicly, legally, finally. Alexander stepped forward, his voice low. How do you know all this? Vivienne dug into her bag and pulled out a folder thick with printed emails, memos, and screenshots. Because I overheard him rehearsing the speech with the Westmont executives. He's going to frame Evelyn as the architect of the trials, and spin himself as the whistleblower. Evelyn felt sick. Why would investors believe that? Because he doctored correspondence, Vivienne whispered. He used AI to fake emails between you and a lab researcher. He made it look like you ordered data manipulation. He's setting up timestamps to match when you were still legally his spouse, so the liabilities fall on you. Evelyn's knees wobbled. Alexander caught her elbow. Sit. She sank into the nearest chair, breath quivering, head spinning. She had known Garrett was capable of cruelty, but she had never imagined he would attempt to ruin her life to save his. Vivienne looked at her, guilt and fear tangled on her face. I'm sorry. I didn't know he'd go this far. I thought, her voice cracked, I thought I mattered to him. Evelyn stared at her, eyes cold. He used you the same way he used me. The only difference is you helped him hurt me. Vivienne lowered her gaze. I know, and I can't undo what I did, but I can help you stop what he's planning. Alexander opened the folder and scanned the pages rapidly, jaw tightening with every line. This is enough to initiate federal investigation, fraud, conspiracy, manipulation of clinical data, securities violations. Vivienne nodded. But it won't matter unless it's shown publicly, before he gets to you. Evelyn looked up sharply. Publicly? Yes, Vivienne said. You need to ruin him on the same stage he plans to ruin you. Alexander closed the folder decisively. You're right, Evelyn blinked. Wait. Right about what? Alexander turned to her, eyes fiercely focused. The summit tomorrow won't be an event. It will be a battleground, and you need to walk onto that stage with every piece of evidence ready. You need to take control of the narrative before Garrett opens his mouth. Evelyn's heart hammered. That's insane. Investors will be there, media, regulators. I'll be humiliated if... You'll be vindicated, Alexander said. If you step into that room prepared, Garrett goes down, hard. Vivienne added frantically. He thinks you'll show up fragile, broken, humiliated. That's why he wants you in the emerald dress. He wants the optics of innocence turning into villainy. Evelyn clenched her jaw. Then I'll give him something else. Alexander nodded approvingly. Exactly. Vivienne stepped closer, voice trembling. He has no idea you're ready. Evelyn rose slowly from her chair. No, she said quietly, fire rising in her chest. He has no idea who I've become. Morning arrived with a quiet heaviness, the kind that pressed against Evelyn's ribs as she stood before the floor-length mirror in her suite. The emerald dress hung there like a challenge, rich, commanding, impossibly elegant. She stared at it for a long time, her reflection fractured between fear and resolve. This was the dress Garrett wanted her to wear. The dress he planned to use as part of his twisted narrative. The dress Vivienne said was perfect for his plan. Evelyn lifted it from the hanger. It no longer felt like a trap. It felt like armor. She dressed slowly, methodically, as if preparing for war. The satin hugged her frame, the deep neckline tasteful but strong. Evelyn pinned her hair in a low-swept style, minimal jewelry, simple heels. Nothing flashy, nothing Garrett could twist into a weapon. When she stepped out of the bedroom, Alexander, already dressed in a charcoal suit, froze mid-sentence. He had been reviewing documents with his security chief, but now his eyes moved over her with quiet astonishment. You look, he exhaled, formidable. Evelyn tried to smile. That's the goal. He approached, his expression softening. Nervous? Terrified, she admitted. Good, he said gently. Courage requires fear. His hand hovered as if he wanted to touch her shoulder, but he didn't. Instead, he nodded toward the table where a small black device waited. The secure recorder. Keep it on you, Alexander reminded her. If he tries anything, capture it. She slipped it into the hidden interior pocket sewn into the dress lining. Ready? He asked. No, she whispered. Let's go, she added. The elevator ride to the lobby felt surreal. Her pulse thudded beneath her ribs, each floor passing like a countdown. When the doors opened, the lobby buzzed with arrivals. Executives, media, photographers, assistants rushing with clipboards. And then the murmur started. Heads turned, eyes widened. Whispers stirred like wind through leaves. Is that Evelyn Harper? She looks different. No. Stronger. Is she here with Reed Biotech? Garrett's gonna lose his mind. The rush of attention rattled her. But Alexander stepped close enough for her to feel the calm radiating off him. You're setting the tone, he said quietly. Remember that. She nodded, lifting her chin. Then she saw him. Garrett Lawson. He stood across the lobby in a navy suit, polished and smug, flanked by two Westmont Capital executives. He was laughing at something, until he saw her. His smile fell, his eyes narrowed, his jaw locked. He hadn't expected this version of her. He expected the broken woman who signed divorce papers in tears. Instead, he saw a woman who looked like she belonged on every magazine in the lobby. Vivienne, lingering behind him with downcast eyes, flinched when she saw Evelyn, part shame, part warning. Garrett recovered quickly, smoothing his expression into one of feigned amusement. He whispered something to an assistant, who hurried off toward the ballroom. Alexander leaned in. That's him repositioning. He's changing his approach because you threw off his plan. Before she could respond, Garrett walked toward them. Each step measured, controlled. "Evelyn," he said, stopping just inches away. "I wasn't sure you'd have the nerve to show up." His voice was loud enough for nearby attendees to hear. Evelyn forced a calm smile. "Disappointing people has never been my style." A flicker of irritation crossed his features. "You look theatrical," he commented, eyes sweeping her dress. "Trying to make a statement?" Alexander stepped forward slightly. "She doesn't need to try." Garrett ignored him. "I hope you enjoy the summit," he said, smile turning razor sharp. "It's going to be unforgettable." She held his gaze steady and cold. "For you, especially." For the first time since she'd known him, Garrett blinked. Evelyn didn't give him time to respond. She turned, heels clicking across the marble floor as she walked toward the ballroom, toward the stage where he intended to frame her for crimes she didn't commit. But now she was armed. Now she had evidence. Now she had allies. And as she stepped into the golden light of the summit hall, Evelyn Harper whispered to herself, "Let him try." The ballroom shimmered beneath chandeliers the size of small cars, every crystal catching the light and scattering it across the polished floor. Evelyn stepped inside, posture tall, heartbeat steadying as she scanned the space she once would have been orchestrating from behind the scenes. Now she walked through the room like someone who finally understood her power. Executives paused mid-conversation. Investors glanced over their shoulders. Photographers subtly shifted their cameras toward her, sensing a story they couldn't yet name. She found her assigned seat near the front, directly across from the Westmont delegation. A strategic placement, one meant to rattle her. One Garrett had carefully arranged. But it didn't rattle her anymore. Alexander took the seat beside her, offering a discreet nod of reassurance. Vivienne slipped quietly into a row several seats back, head low, terrified someone would recognize her. Evelyn didn't look at her, but she felt Vivienne's nervous energy pulsing across the room. A man approached the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host began, "welcome to Day 1 of the Reed Biotech Global Summit." Applause rippled, but Evelyn barely registered it. She kept her eyes trained on the entrance. Garrett made his entrance 30 seconds later. Broad shoulders, perfectly tailored suit, that same smug swagger he always had when he believed he was 3 steps ahead of everyone. Cameras followed him like he was a celebrity. Westmont executives flanked him, one of them carrying a sleek black briefcase, locked, secure, ominous. Evelyn knew what was in it. Fabricated evidence, fake emails, false timestamps. A scripted narrative ready to paint her as a criminal. Her fingers brushed the hidden pocket in her dress, feeling the smooth edges of the recorder Alexander had given her. She didn't know how the next hour would unfold, but she was ready to capture every lie that left Garrett's mouth. Alexander leaned in. "Whatever happens, stay calm. He expects you to break." Evelyn exhaled slowly. "I won't." The summit moved through its initial presentations. Harmless corporate speeches, charity announcements, investment forecasts. Garrett kept stealing glances at her, confident, calculating, unaware that the trap he set was already disintegrating beneath him. Finally, the host spoke. "And now we invite Garrett Lawson, representing Westmont Capital, to the stage for a major announcement." A murmur spread like electricity. Evelyn's pulse sharpened. This was it. Garrett ascended the stage with a polished smile, adjusting his tie before gripping the microphone. "Thank you," he said. "Today marks a pivotal moment, not just for Westmont, but for the entire biotech investment sphere." He paused dramatically. "Before we reveal our breakthrough partnership, I need to address something critical. Something involving former event producer Evelyn Harper." Whispers erupted instantly. Dozens of eyes turned toward her. Alexander's jaw clenched. Vivienne stiffened. Evelyn stayed perfectly still. Garrett continued, voice dripping with false concern. "Recently, certain irregularities have surfaced. Emails, lab communications, directives linked to fabricated clinical trial data originating from Miss Harper during her marriage to me." Gasps scattered around the room. Gasps scattered around the room. But before Garrett could take another breath, Evelyn rose. A single, elegant movement. The ballroom fell silent. She stepped into the aisle with unhurried grace, heels clicking softly against marble. Everyone watched, confused, curious, hungry for the drama unfolding. Garrett faltered. "Evelyn, this isn't the time." "It is exactly the time," she said, her voice calm, steady, amplified not by a microphone, but by the sheer force of the room's attention. She lifted a hand. Vivienne stood trembling and rushed forward, stopping beside Evelyn. "Tell them," Evelyn said quietly. Vivienne swallowed, eyes flicking nervously across the crowd. Then she spoke, voice cracking. "Garrett fabricated everything. The clinical trials, the emails, the timestamps, the audio. He planned to frame Evelyn because regulators were closing in on Westmont." Garrett's face drained of color. The ballroom exploded into noise, shouts, gasps, reporters scrambling. But Evelyn wasn't finished. She held up a USB. "This," she said, "contains every recording, every transfer, every file proving Garrett Lawson's conspiracy." Spotlights swung toward her. Security moved in. Alexander stood, ready. Garrett lunged. "Security!" someone yelled. But Evelyn didn't flinch. She looked her ex-husband dead in the eyes and whispered, "Round 2 is mine." Chaos erupted so fast the chandeliers above seemed to tremble. Investors stood from their seats, craning for a better view. Journalists surged down the aisles like a tidal wave. Security guards raced toward the front of the room. Westmont executives shouted over one another, trying to regain control. And Garrett Lawson, usually composed, charming, untouchable, looked like a man watching his entire empire crumble in slow motion. "Evelyn," he barked, pointing at her with shaking fingers. "You're lying. She's lying. This is all revenge." But his voice cracked, not with power, with panic. Evelyn held her ground, shoulders squared, chin lifted. All the trembling she'd felt for months evaporated the moment she saw fear flicker in Garrett's eyes. No deepfake could replicate this moment. No forged email could erase it. No whisper campaign could twist it. This was the truth, and the truth was finally louder than his lies. Alexander stepped beside her, projecting quiet authority. "All evidence has already been forwarded to federal investigators," he said to the room, voice deep, steady, and unmistakably commanding. "Everything Evelyn just presented has been verified by independent forensic analysts." A hush fell. Evelyn added, "And every single file comes directly from Vivienne Rhodes, your former partner in crime." Vivienne flinched at the attention, but stepped closer, her voice trembling yet audible. "He told me he was planning to blame everything on Evelyn. He said she'd fall apart in public, that she wasn't strong enough to fight back." The crowd gasped. Garrett's facade cracked further. Sweat beaded at his hairline as he looked around, searching desperately for someone, anyone to defend him. But the Westmont executives slowly inched away, their faces ghost white. They knew what this meant. If the data manipulation scandal went public, and it just had, they were going down with him. One executive hissed, "You told us the liability was contained." Garrett's voice wavered. It was. I had everything under control. She was supposed to crumble. She was supposed to." He stopped. The room had gone dead silent again. Reporters scribbled furiously. The slip was fatal. Evelyn stepped forward close enough for only Garrett to hear. "I didn't crumble," she whispered. "You just underestimated the wrong woman." His jaw clenched, nostrils flaring. "You think you can win? You think you can destroy me?" She didn't blink. "I don't have to destroy you, Garrett. You did that yourself." Security moved in then, flanking him, but Garrett shoved them away, voice rising into something desperate, unhinged. "This is fraud. Fabrication. You're all being manipulated," he shouted, but his words were more frantic than persuasive. "I built everything. Me. She was nothing without me." Gasps erupted. Several phones next to the stage recorded every second. Live streams captured his unraveling. It was over. He just didn't know it yet. A federal compliance officer in a navy blazer stepped up to the stage, flashing credentials. "Mr. Lawson, I need you to come with me. There are active investigations." Garrett snapped. "Investigations? I own this industry." "No," Alexander said quietly, stepping closer. "Not anymore." Garrett lunged in Evelyn's direction, fury twisting his features, but security intercepted him instantly, forcing his arms behind his back. "Get your hands off me," he roared, kicking, thrashing. "You think you've won, Evelyn? You're nothing." His voice cut off as he was dragged through the ballroom, reporters swarming behind him like sharks sensing blood. Evelyn didn't move. Her chest rose and fell slowly, steadily, as the man who destroyed her was escorted out not as a power player, but as a criminal. A woman near the front wiped tears. Someone whispered, "Finally." A man in a tailored suit murmured, "She survived hell and came out standing." Alexander turned to her softly. "You were extraordinary." Evelyn's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry anymore. Not for Garrett. She breathed in deeply as the last of the chaos faded around her. For the first time in years, Evelyn Harper knew she wasn't just surviving, she was winning. The ballroom slowly emptied as federal officers escorted Garrett out the back entrance, lights from half a dozen cameras trailing him like a scarlet mark of shame. Evelyn remained where she stood near the stage, her breath finally loosening in her chest, as if the weight of years had shifted off her shoulders all at once. Alexander didn't speak right away. He simply stood beside her, quiet, steady, a presence she hadn't realized she had needed until now. When she finally turned to him, his eyes held no pity, only respect. "You did it," he said softly. "No," Evelyn whispered, her voice steadier than she felt. "I finally stopped letting him do it." A rush of emotion swelled behind her ribs. Relief, disbelief, justice, grief for the years she had lost. But above all, there was a strange peace. A peace she hadn't felt since long before the lies, before the deep fake, before Garrett had chipped away at her until she didn't recognize herself. Vivienne approached slowly, wringing her hands. Her face still carried traces of mascara tear stains, but there was a humility in her posture now, no arrogance, no polished charm, just a woman drowning in regret. "I know you don't want to hear from me," she said, voice shaking. "But I'm sorry, Evelyn, not just for what happened today, for everything." Evelyn looked at her for a long moment. She saw a woman who had been manipulated, groomed, used, just as she had once been. But Vivienne had also chosen to hurt her. "You helped him destroy me," Evelyn said quietly. "I know." Vivienne's voice cracked. "And I'll live with that for the rest of my life. But you saved mine today. If Garrett hadn't been stopped, he would have dragged me down too." Evelyn sighed, exhaustion and clarity settling over her. "Vivienne, I don't forgive you. Not today. But I won't be the reason your life falls apart. You choose where you go from here." Vivienne's shoulders trembled. She nodded, tears falling freely. "Thank you for not being like him." She walked away, disappearing into the crowd of reporters and officers. Evelyn exhaled. It was done. Finally, completely done. Alexander touched her elbow gently. "Let's step out for some air." They walked out of the ballroom and into the quiet courtyard behind the hotel. The late afternoon sun dipped behind the palm trees, casting long golden shadows across the stone path. A soft breeze drifted in, warm and gentle. Evelyn inhaled deeply, letting the sunlight touch her face. She had forgotten what it felt like to breathe without fear. Alexander stood beside her with his hands in his pockets, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You know," he said finally, voice low, "most people would have broken long before today." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Maybe I did break, but I also rebuilt." He nodded slowly. "And you rebuilt stronger than anyone expected, even you." She laughed softly. "I'll admit, I didn't expect to survive him." "You didn't just survive him," Alexander said gently. "You exposed him. You ended him. That takes a kind of strength I've rarely seen." Their eyes met, and something warm flickered between them. Something unspoken but real. "For the first time in years," Evelyn whispered, "I feel free." Alexander stepped closer, the sunlight catching the edge of his jawline. "You are, and whatever you choose next, it's yours. No shadows, no cage, no one pulling strings behind your back." Evelyn felt the truth settle deep in her chest. Her life was finally hers again, her future wide open, her name restored, her dignity reclaimed. And the man who tried to destroy her, dragged away in handcuffs. Justice didn't erase the past, but it finally closed it. Evelyn let out a long breath, the last pieces of the old version of herself drifting away with it. And for the first time in forever, she began to imagine a life not defined by what she'd escaped, but by what she could finally become. Evelyn watched the sunset settle across Beverly Hills, the sky melting into soft streaks of pink and gold. The courtyard had gone quiet now. No reporters, no chaos, no Garrett tearing through her world like a storm she could never outrun. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel threatening. It felt earned. Alexander stood beside her, hands loosely in his pockets, giving her space while still remaining close enough to be a steady presence. She didn't know when she had begun to rely on his calm, but somewhere between the truth and the fire, he had become her anchor. "You know," he said gently, breaking the comfortable silence, "there's one thing we haven't talked about." She turned slightly toward him. "What's that?" "What you want next." The question stole her breath. Her life had been in survival mode for so long, dodging sabotage, fighting lies, rebuilding shattered confidence, that she had forgotten what it felt like to choose something for herself. A real future, a free future. "I don't even know where to start," she admitted. Alexander offered a small smile. "Then start simple. What's the first thing you want to do tomorrow morning?" Evelyn laughed softly, shaking her head. "Sleep, without nightmares." "That's a good start," he said warmly. "And the second?" She hesitated. "Call my mother. Tell her I'm okay. Tell her everything's going to change." He nodded. "And it will." Evelyn looked out at the fading horizon. The weight of the past years, the manipulation, the doubt, the fear, felt like a distant echo now. A chapter closed, a lock turned, a door sealed forever. "Alexander," she said quietly, "what happens with Reed Biotech now? With the summit? With the fallout?" "We'll handle it," he said. "Regulators will take over Garrett's case. Westmont will scramble, but they won't survive the scandal. And the summit will go on, with you leading the restoration effort." She swallowed. "You want me to stay?" "I don't want you to stay," Alexander corrected. "I hope you will. There's a difference." Her heart fluttered unexpectedly. She had spent years shrinking herself to fit Garrett's world. Now, here stood a man who didn't want her small, didn't want her silent, didn't want her dependent. He wanted her powerful, independent, whole. "What if I'm not ready?" she whispered. "You are," he said simply. "You proved that today, and yesterday, and every day you chose not to disappear." A long, steady breath escaped her lips, half relief, half realization. Then Alexander's expression softened even further. "Evelyn, I want you to know something." She looked at him fully now. His voice lowered, warm and sincere. "I didn't help you because I felt obligated. I helped you because I believe in you. And because, if I'm being honest, I care about what happens to you. More than you might realize." Her chest tightened, but not with fear this time. With possibility. She stepped a little closer. "I care too," she admitted softly, "more than I expected to." Something unspoken passed between them. Gentle, electric, unmistakably real. Alexander reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear. Hesitation flickered for only a moment before he leaned in and kissed her, slow, warm, grounding. Not a rescue, not a claim, an invitation. Evelyn felt her heart settle into a rhythm she hadn't felt in years. Safe, certain, alive. When they finally pulled apart, she let her forehead rest against his. "So this is what freedom feels like," she whispered. "No," Alexander murmured with a faint smile. "This is what the beginning feels like." Evelyn smiled. Full, genuine, bright. Garrett was gone, her name was cleared, her life was hers again. And standing in the golden glow of a Beverly Hills sunset with justice behind her and a future finally opening before her, Evelyn Harper stepped into the next chapter, not as a survivor, but as a woman reborn. So that's where Evelyn's story comes to a close. But if you are still here, listening until this very last moment, then something in her journey must have touched your heart in a way only truth and pain can. And maybe, just maybe, it reminded you of a quiet truth we all forget. Your life can collapse, your trust can be broken, but you are never too far gone to rise again. The ancient Stoics believed that the obstacle is the way. And Evelyn's fall became exactly that, her doorway back to herself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Real strength lies there." Evelyn discovered that power the moment she stopped letting someone else define her worth. And you can too. If you're healing from betrayal, if you're rebuilding after loss, remember this. What breaks you is not the end of your story. It's the sharpening of your spirit. Your comeback begins the moment you refuse to stay who someone tried to turn you into. If this story stayed with you even for a second, then don't leave quietly. Like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe so you don't miss the next journey we'll walk together. We're here with you. Always.